Order. The first item on today's order paper is questions addressed to ministers in the governance cluster. Members may press the to talk button on their desk if they wish to ask a supplementary question. Honourable members, I have been informed that the first question that has been asked by the Honourable J.C. Muloi Muropa has been withdrawn. Question number 297 has been asked by the Honourable C. Dudley to the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities, the Honourable the Minister. Honourable Minister, may I advise ministers that when it's question time, they should be in Parliament on time to answer questions. Honourable Minister, you have the floor. Order, members, order. Order, order.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, my department is aware that there are special problems that are faced by children with special needs. The department is working very closely with the Department of Basic Education and the Department of Social Development to address these concerns. Our department has done a special audit on special schools and has made recommendations to the relevant departments on how we can improve the situation of these facilities. The department is also working closely in ensuring that the relevant teachers and personnel in these institutions are trained. We are also working very hard to ensure that our policy of inclusive education is implemented in our schools. We are working closely with the Department of Social Development to ensure that the ECD program of action ensures that ECDs are accessible to include children with disabilities at that young age. We are also working closely with the Department of Higher Education, which has made available an amount of 77 million to ensure that young people with disabilities have access to FETs and have access to higher education. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Is a supplementary question, the Honourable C. Dudley.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Minister, the Department of Health occupational therapists at present can't actually place intellectually impaired children in special schooling, and they must forward the cases to special needs education services. And this is where there's a lot of problems. Lists of children await attention for up to 2 years. parents are not contacted, phones are not being answered, and so there's a situation where people are feeling that they would prefer it back in the hands of the Department of Health, and so it is a situation that needs to be looked into. There's also a catch-22 situation, as government will not place special needs teachers at schools unless there are sufficient students, and schools will not accept students without sufficient teachers. So that's another area that would need to be looked into. Is it possible for me to be sent that special audit and recommendations? I'd much appreciate it. Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Yes, Honourable Speaker, we will make available the special audit to the Honourable Member. We will also convey the concerns of the Honourable Member to the relevant departments. Thank you.
Thank you. The next supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Boinamo, G. Boinamo. Will the real Boinamo come and ask the question? Okay, Boinamo is not in the house. We then move on. Oh, Lamula, Honourable Lamula.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you for the answer, Minister. In the annual report of 2012-2013, it was reported that the department produced none of the 5 reports it planned for on the access to education for children and young people with disabilities. However, the department did indicate that it conducted an audit of special schools. And I think you referred to that when answering. My question then is, how has the department utilized the information contained in the special schools audit? Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I did say that the department has referred the report to the relevant departments. We are in discussions with the Department of Education and the Department of Social Development. I've already referred to the Program of Action on ECD, which has already been launched in 2013 by the Department for Social Development to take care of the needs of children with disabilities and special needs. But also the Department of Basic Education is doing a lot. Already they are looking at sign language. They have already included that in our curriculum, launched this year, and will be in our schools in 2014. They are also looking at Braille material in our schools. I have already referred to the implementation of the inclusive education policy in our schools. I thank you, Honourable.
The remaining supplementary questions will go to Honourable Sibanyoni and the last to Honourable Ferguson, in that order. Honourable Sibanyoni.
Oh, I want, okay. Sorry.
Are you Sibanyoni today?
No, yes, I'm Sibanyoni today. Press Sibanyoni. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for the comprehensive response. But I feel, Honourable Minister, there is still more that needs to be done with regard to these children in order to benefit in these ordinary schools. So can you tell us more as to what is it that the department is going to be done? What more needs is the department going to do?
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the department has been having consultations on the national policy, on the national disability policy with stakeholders, including organizations of people with disabilities. This draft policy is now going to be submitted to Cabinet. We believe also that through this policy, we will be able to ensure the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We'll also be able to ensure access to education, access to health, and also ensure that our policies, our buildings, our transport system is more accessible for persons with disabilities. We are also working with other departments, including the Department of Transport, the Department of Communications, and the Department of Public Works, which has a special budget to ensure our buildings, including our schools, are accessible, to ensure that we are able to improve universal access, including in our schools. Thank you, Chairperson.
Then the last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Ferguson.
Thank you, Speaker. Can the Minister possibly indicate if her department has conducted any research on the efficacy of mainstreaming of children with special needs in South Africa over the past 20 years, and if the department considered best practice internationally in other progressive and developing countries? If so, can the Minister please tell the House about these findings?
The Honorable the Minister.
Yes, Chairperson, one of the responsibilities and part of our mandate is to ensure mainstreaming of the rights of women, children, and persons with disabilities. We have begun to ensure that these rights are mainstreamed, and we have done surveys and research to look at the standards and the needs of persons with disabilities. Part of this audit was exactly to look at these issues. There is a lot that still needs to be done in South Africa. We know that we have more than 400,000 children with disabilities that are not at school. However, we're working very closely with the Minister for Basic Education to ensure that our schools are accessible, but most importantly, because not all children need special schools. Only those that have severe disabilities need to go to a special school. So we are ensuring that the inclusive education policy in the country is implemented, including through awareness raising and educational programs in our provinces, in our communities, for our teachers and our school principals to work together with the government to ensure that our schools are accessible. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Question number 311 has been asked by the Honorable M. Waters to the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities. May I remind honourable members, please don't press the to talk button if you don't intend to ask questions. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Child Protection Register, as per the Children's Act, includes Part A and Part B. Part A of the register includes the function of capturing information about children who enter into the school protection system as a result of reported abuse or neglect, and the progress made on the management of these special cases. While Part B is intended to be a record of persons who are unsuitable to work with children. If the court makes a finding that the person is unsuitable to work with environments where there are children, the person's name must be placed on the register. The matter of the Child Protection Register and the challenges of implementation was indeed an issue that was raised during our consultations with departments and provinces during the 2011 and 2012 consultation for the writing of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and AU reports. The department participates actively in the National Child Protection Forum and the review of the Children's Act. These are platforms where these matters are addressed collectively in a constructive and progressive manner by all those who are serious about finding solutions to the challenges that face the country and its children. In addition, the department participated and responded to the Human Rights Commission's report on the Child Protection Register. We are therefore aware of the challenges experienced by the departments responsible. We have noted also the recommendations made by the South African Human Rights Commission to the relevant departments. The response to these recommendations and implementation thereof lies with the relevant departments. The department's advocacy and monitoring role is informed by the understanding that the country has international treaties or conventions, national, constitutional, and legislative obligations to ensure the protection of children. The department upholds the position that the current resource constraints, including human resources, technical and institutional capacity, continues to hamper the full implementation of the Child Protection Register. The Departments of Social Development, Justice and Constitutional Development, and the South African Police Service have received the full report needed from both government and civil society to review, capacitate, and operate an efficient and effective child protection register systems. This goes beyond the implementation.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. Is there a supplementary question? Honourable M. Waters.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the Human Rights Commission of South Africa recently released a damning report into the Child Protection Register, where the Minister's Department states in the report that the resource constraints and financial limitations are the reasons that the Department has failed to monitor the Child Protection Register. And in fact, the Minister's just reiterated those 2 points here today. Minister, can you inform the House how your department can spend 1.9 million rand on new cars, over 2 million rand on furniture, over 6 million rand on overseas trips, and claim it has financial constraints in fulfilling a core responsibility? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I think each and every department has responsibilities including reporting to the United Nations. My department has to report on women, progress made since Beijing, a lot of progress, except nothing by the DA. Zero by the DA. Also has to report on programs
Order.
we are implementing on people with disabilities. I also want to make it clear, Honorable Speaker, I did not buy furniture for 2 million. I am not doing shopping in my department. I also want to reiterate the lies of the DA that I have paid exorbitant bonuses to my officials. I have never paid any bonus to any official since this department was set up. The DA, in their desperation to campaign for more votes, are busy misleading the House and the nation. I want to clarify, Honorable Speaker.
Honourable Speaker, point of order, please. Honourable
yes,
Speaker,
there's
the
a
Minister
point
is
of order.
making a delightful speech, but she's not answering the question. Can you please get the
I
answer
have
to the
made
question?
it clear that
Take
the
your seat,
Department of Social Development and Justice, who have to implement the Child Protection Register, have resource constraints. We need to ensure that social workers are trained. We need to ensure that they are able to manage the Part A of the register. Part B of the register, which is for the offender. First of all, the court must find the offender guilty before they are registered. However, we are also saying that the two departments have resource constraints. It's not about my department. My department is monitoring.
Oh, no,
I'm
your time has
referring
expired.
to these two departments.
The next supplementary questions will go to the Honourable G. Tseke, followed by Honourable E. More.
Oh, thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for the response, your earlier response. But my question relates to the implementation and the monitoring of the Child Protection Register. And bearing in mind that it is the responsibility of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the Social Development, how will you make sure that in future we improve in terms of monitoring and implementation? Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have already said that my department is part of the Children's Review Forum, that we are ensuring the implementation of the recommendations of the Human Rights Commission, the Department of Justice and the Department of Social Development have been given 5 months by the Human Rights Commission to implement its recommendations, and we are working together. We will ensure, since we are part of the review of the Children's Act review, which also looks at the Child Protection Register and how it must be improved. We will make sure that these improvements are implemented and the relevant departments are able to report on time. Thank you, Honourable.
Thank you. Honourable More.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, given the Human Rights Commission's damning report on, amongst other things, the department's failure to monitor the implementation of the Child Protection Register, and considering that the department mandate is to promote, facilitate, coordinate, and monitor the realization of the rights of women, children, and people with disabilities, how should this assembly justify the continued financing of a department that cannot deliver on its core mandate? I thank you, Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I have answered all the questions the Honourable Member has asked. I have assured the House how we are going to deliver on these important tasks that have been given by the Human Rights Commission. But I also want to remind the Honourable Member that the Western Cape government is doing nothing on women, children, and people with disabilities. I think it is high time the Honourable Member clean their own house before they point fingers at others. And I am happy, Honourable Speaker, that my department is doing its job. I thank you.
Question number 335 has been asked by the Honourable DG Sengetwa to the Minister.
Speaker, sorry, there's one more opportunity for follow-up. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, the Minister may say the Western Cape's not doing much for women, children and persons with disabilities, but let me tell you, our leader is a woman. Our parliamentary leader is a woman. And we believe that a woman can be a president of this country, unlike your party and your Women's League. Minister, the Human Rights Commission report, which we've all both referred to, found that the state is not fulfilling its objectives to protect children from abuse and neglect. The current Child Protect Register is not a true reflection of crimes committed against children. Failure to adequately implement the register has rendered it ineffective, and the list goes on and on and on. Minister, you've tried to justify your overseas jaunts. You've tried to justify the new furniture in your office. I see you didn't try and justify the purchasing of new cars. I wonder why. But can you please explain to this House once and for all, why is it that your department cannot oversee the Child Protection Register and do a core responsibility of monitoring the register? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Honourable Member, I've never bought a car since I was Minister of Agriculture. The cars that were bought in my department were for the protectors because it is too expensive to hire a car every month. It is a cost-saving tactic that where we are trying to save on cars. I also want to say I have not had any jaunt overseas except to go and report to the United Nations on the tasks that we have been given by the President of South Africa, to report on progress women are making, to report on progress people with disabilities are making. I also want to assure honourable members that South Africa is a shining example to the world in terms of empowering women. We are number 2 in Africa after Rwanda in terms of representation of women in parliament. We are number 6 the whole world in terms of the OECD. So we have a lot to be proud of. We have 2 deputy ministers who have a disability. We have 96 public representatives who have disabilities. I believe, therefore, that the ANC government has done a lot to empower our people. The ANC government in the past 20 years have passed laws and a constitution that is lauded the world over. Thank you, Chair.
We move on to question number 335. Order, members, order. We move on to question 335, which has been asked by the Honourable DG Sengetwa to the Minister for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. I've been informed that the Deputy Minister will be answering questions on behalf of the Minister. The Honourable the Deputy Minister.
Speaker, thank you very much. The newly determined municipal boundaries as determined by the Municipal Demarcation Board and announced on the 15th of October 2013 will be implemented with effect from the 2016 municipal elections. There are many advantages to these determinations, amongst them the ability to focus on broader developmental area issues, which provides an opportunity for the newly formed metros to leverage resources and attract investments, the capacity to leverage all socio-economic issues by operating a single tier of local government with reduced bureaucracy, the ability to better address the issue of grant dependence, better allocation of powers and functions, and the creation of improved efficiencies in service delivery, and so advance the principles of developmental local government. Currently, there are 278 municipalities categorized as local, district, and metropolitan. The recent determinations by the Municipal Demarcation Board will result in a reduction to 267 municipalities. There will be 11 fewer local municipalities, 1 less district municipality. It should be noted that only 2 provinces, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, are affected by the reduction in the number of their municipalities. There are currently 61 municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal province. This will be reduced to 54. And Gauteng now has 12 municipalities. The redeterminations will result in the elimination of 4 municipalities and the establishment of 1 new metropolitan municipality. I thank you.
Is there a supplementary question? Honourable Hlangetwa.
Thanks, Honourable Speaker. Deputy Minister, thanks for your response. In terms of Section 21 of the Local Government Municipal Demarcation Act number 27 of 1998, the Municipal Demarcation Board has redetermined the municipal boundaries in some of the municipalities, as you mentioned, Deputy Speaker. Having assessed the capacities of municipalities and the impact of the rationalization and the advantages you just mentioned, Deputy Minister, what transition measures will be put in place to ensure that those municipalities affected will function fully from the outset?
The Honourable the Deputy Minister.
Speaker, thank you very much. I think we all know that the Municipal Demarcation Board is an independent institution. It conducts its work in terms of the Constitution and the law. It has certain criteria that it uses for making the determinations that it does. We believe that for these determinations, it's taken into account a wide range of factors that are set out in the Act. However, we're also mindful that in the implementation of any such redemarcations, there will be challenges. And for that reason, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has put together task teams to assist the municipalities in question to work towards the implementation of the determinations of the Municipal Demarcation Board. Thank you.
I have the following names on my list of speakers: Honourable P.F. Smith, Honourable Steenhuisen, and Honourable Ferguson, in that order.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy Minister, you're familiar with the expression that justice should not merely be done, but should be seen to be done. And the same thing, we have an independent Municipal Demarcation Board. You call it independent. It should not merely act independently, but should be seen to be doing so. And I put it to you that, in fact, in its behavior over several years, a growing perception has arisen that it is not the independent body that it purports to be. Now, you may or may not agree with the factual case being made, but certainly the perceptions out there are growing that the board does not act as it should. The board is due for renewal. The government's behavior itself has sometimes been on question. Would you, as a Deputy Minister, commit yourself and your department to ensuring that whenever this board is changed, as is due soon, that it is staffed with people who are fully committed, fearlessly, to maintaining the integrity and the independence of the board and do not succumb to behavior which results in perceptions of their being partisan.
The Honourable Deputy Minister.
Speaker, I think the Honourable Smith's question raises a broader issue. And I think it's an issue that's very fundamental to this stage of the development of our democracy. And that is the respect that we should accord to the institutions that we've established in the Constitution and through legislation. We can't adopt an approach that suggests that these institutions are independent and worthy of respect when they decide in ways that we want them to decide. And when we're not happy with their decisions, we then impugn their dignity, we impugn their reputation. I think that's a very, very dangerous thing to do in any democracy, but I think especially in ours at this stage of our development. The Honourable Smith, I think, has been quite correct to say that he is referring to perceptions. He asked me whether he predicted that I might not agree with the factual case that he's making out. Indeed, I don't, because he hasn't made out a factual case. He stated a perception without any facts to support that perception. As I've said, the Municipal Demarcation Board is established by the Constitution. It operates in terms of the law. And I think unless there's concrete evidence to suggest that they've not complied with the Constitution or the law, then we must respect the outcomes of its processes. The Honourable Smith is quite correct that there are 3 vacancies on the board as it exists now, that a further 7 positions will become vacant at the beginning of next year. And in order to ensure that there's a smooth transition and that the work of the board is not interrupted, a process has been put in motion to identify candidates to fill those vacancies. I think as we speak, those interviews are being conducted or would have been concluded yesterday. Thank you very much.
Honourable Cian Hazy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It would be very nice to see the Minister here today. We haven't met him at committee yet. But nonetheless, you want to deal in fact, Deputy Minister. Let's deal in fact then. On the 24th of January this year, a joint press statement was put out by your so-called Independent Municipal Demarcation Board on the Department of Cooperative Government's ministry letterhead and their own letterhead, in which I want to quote, the meeting noted and agreed that the Minister's public announcement to put the demarcation process on hold was in the interests of peace and stability. Now I ask you, given what you've just said in this House, whether you regard that as the independence that we require from a board like this when a Minister is able to interfere directly, go above a board and put a process on hold when it suits the ANC to do so. This demarcation board has itself to blame for the perceptions that are out there. They have behaved recklessly. The fact that the so-called independent chairperson, Mr. Mshlangu, can put his signature to a joint press statement like this with the ministry is unacceptable, and he deserves the scorn that South Africans are pouring on him and the light that is now shining on it. But let's be absolutely clear what the impact was, because that's what the question said. The impact was that the ANC have now gerrymandered the only municipality in Gauteng that's run by the DA, the best run municipality in Gauteng, into the ANC's clutches. That's what this demarcation process was set out to achieve from the beginning, and that's what it's achieved.
Expired. The Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker, the point that I made earlier, I want to reiterate. The Municipal Demarcation Board operates in terms of the Constitution and the law. The law sets out the criteria in terms of which it makes its determinations. The Honourable Member has not stood up here in this House and adduced a single shred of evidence that would suggest that the board has not complied with the Constitution or the law. He says that the ANC has gerrymandered a municipality, a DA municipality out of existence. He does not provide one shred of evidence. No, the honourable
Order, members, order.
all that the honourable member has held up in this House is a letter that says that a given process was on hold at a particular time. I will have a look at that letter, but I don't know how a process being on hold affects the outcome, the content of that process. And he said nothing whatsoever about the appropriateness, the propriety of the process, or the factors considered by the Municipal Demarcation Board in arriving at their conclusion. So please, can we make an appeal to members? Can we please respect our institutions, the institutions created by our Constitution, give them the respect that they deserve. Remember, honourable members,
Order, members, order.
a decision that today might not please you, that emanates from an institution, tomorrow that same institution might come up with a decision that pleases you. And by that time, you would have rubbished the integrity and the reputation of that institution. So let us be careful in how we go about the treatment of our institutions. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Ferguson.
Honourable Speaker, I think the Deputy Minister has answered sufficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to question 336. That has been asked by Honourable L. van der Merwe to the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities. The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In response to the question, our department has beefed up the human capacity of Programme 4 to enable it to carry out planned activities set for the 2013-2014 annual performance plan. The department as a whole has also started during the recent strategic plan to consider best practice or approach to work collaboratively with different units. The major achievements envisaged in the 2013-2014 financial year for Programme 4 include the development of the first 2014 UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities report in line with the 2010 baseline periodic report, which was concluded at the end of the 2012-2013 financial year. The development of the National Disability Rights Policy, the 3 baseline studies on access to institutions of higher learning, learnerships and experience of public servants with disabilities, and the Universal Access Design Framework. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Is there a supplementary question? The Honourable van der Merwe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, the programme is underperforming and it's not acceptable because it's people with disabilities that suffer the consequences. And to blame the fact that you haven't got enough human resources is not an adequate excuse, because one other programme that's got less people in that programme actually performed better. But maybe the problem is that we haven't got enough passion and commitment for the plight of people with disabilities. Because here in my hand I have a letter that was written to your office in May 2012 bemoaning the plight of a community, and they never got a response from from you, Honourable Minister. But the reality is that while this department diligently attends AU and UN conferences, which you've highlighted, and which is evident in the increase in your department's travel expenditure having tripled from 3.3 million to 9.9 million, the ratification of these conventions have yet to translate into meaningful change in the lives of ordinary people with disabilities. Just this morning we heard that only 0.4% of people with disabilities are employed in government. This is totally unacceptable. Considering the absence of legislation which has been in the pipeline for years and years, what will this underperforming program do differently in future to ensure that South Africans with disabilities are able to access their fundamental social and economic rights? I thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. First of all, I have already stated that the department is working on the National Disability Rights Policy, which will ensure that accessibility is made universal and that the rights of persons with disabilities are respected. I have also referred to the Universal Access and Design Framework, which will ensure that we work with various departments, ensure that when they design buildings and so on, they take into consideration, including schools, they take into consideration the issues of access for persons with disabilities. We are working also very closely with the Department for Public Service and Administration, and we are looking at the performance assessments or contracts of heads of departments. Cabinet has taken a decision that part of the KPAs for heads of departments and accounting officers in November 2012 must include ensuring that they work on the 50% target for women in SMS and 2% target for persons with disabilities in the workforce. So we believe that in the coming year, we will be working with the Department for Public Service and Administration to ensure that these policies and programs are implemented. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I have on my list the following persons who wish to take the floor: Honourable Peterson Madu, Honourable A. Njobe, and Honourable Lamula in that order. Honourable Peterson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Minister, I just want to know how will this policy affect the lives of the people with disability? I am referring to the National Disability Rights and the policy and the Universal Access and the Design Framework. Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thanks to the Honourable Member. The policy, National Disability Rights Policy, will assist us in ensuring that people with disabilities have access, in ensuring that people with disabilities have access to education, access to justice, but also will ensure that we can look at possible legislation. As I said, we are still consulting, particularly the disability sector, to hear from them their views, whether we can develop this policy to legislation that will assist us domesticate the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Universal Access and Design Framework will prescribe universal access to transport, to buildings, to information, such as ICT, and other programs that we think will help us ensure that people with disabilities, including children in schools, have more access in our country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Jobe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Minister, given its poor performance, with the department achieving less than 40% of its objectives, with a staff complement over and above its complement, and exceeding its budget, is it not time, Honorable Minister, that this department is collapsed into and mainstreamed with social development? Is there any compelling reason why this should not happen? I thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Somlomo. I Somlomo ndicinga ba umama ulahlekile. Umama is talking about 2012. Indeed, in 2012, this is where the department was. In terms of the Auditor General, we were all red. As honorable members can see, the blue lines are saying we are going down in every sector in the department. Yes, and we had achieved 40% of our targets. This year, Honorable Speaker, we have adopted in June last year a turnaround strategy that has ensured that we move away from the red. We are now going green. We are amber. And I want to assure the honorable member that by the end of this financial year, we will have more greens. This year, we have got over 70% in terms of achieving our targets. On children, we are at 100% in terms of achieving our targets. On women, we are over 80% in terms of achieving our targets. Yes, we still have a lot of work to do on the disability sector, but overall, we have improved, Mama. Sithethe nyana.
Honorable Lamula.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, it is rather sad that 4 years down the line, we still have a lot to improve on disabled persons. They are the most vulnerable, and truly we are not seeing to their needs. My question is also on the National Disability Policy, which I feel is a tool so much needed to strengthen and to really help the disabled. And I say after 4 years of this department's existence, South Africa still does not have, and please listen carefully, a published national disability policy. That is what I'm looking for, a published national disability policy. Why am I looking for that one? This was one of the many targets that was not achieved by your department in the 2012-2013 financial year. Although there is nothing wrong with forming partnerships with the United Nations and other donors, and it might just help you, why can't this department take responsibility for finishing this policy, this very much needed policy, on its own when it was planned and budgeted for in the annual performance plan of the department? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Speaker. And ndicinga into kokuba kuthiwa susa intongo elisweni uzokwazi ubona kakuhle. akaboni umama kuba kaloku kungwevu apha emehlweni. Ipolicy ye disability kudala yapasiswa yile government. Ipolicy ye disability into esiphezu kwayo ngoku we are reviewing our national disability policy framework which was adopted in 2000 by this ANC government. Kuba into yokuqala yenziwa yi-government yabantu kaKhongolose kukujonga abona abantu bahlelelekileyo, the most marginalized, abafazi, abantwana nabantu abakhubazekileyo. Kungoko lo rhulumente imithetho emininzi ayipasisayo engena nje uTata Mandela apha kulendlu yowisomthetho wajonga uKhongolose ukuba omama must be empowered, children must be empowered, people with disabilities must be empowered. So those are the first policies that were passed by this government. Also the United Nations instruments concerning women, children, and people with disabilities. Mama nabantwana zapasiswa ngo-1995. South Africa was part of the architects that drew up the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Disabled people, South Africa activists were there in New York, drafta le policy. That's why South Africa was one of the first countries to sign and ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Apa ngo-2007. I-DA ke yona ayina report because ithetha nje they don't have a single woman MEC apha eWestern Cape. Banaye ke unomgogwana olapha eParliament ongenayo nebudget.
Your time has expired.
Ndiyabulela.
Order, members, order. Question, order. Question number 314 has been asked by the Honorable K.K. Musimani to the Minister for Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, the Honorable Deputy Minister.
Speaker, thank you very much. The Auditor General's findings related to supply chain management, which showed weaknesses in procurement processes, human resource management issues, and the filling of vacancies in particular. Information technology, financial health, competency levels in key positions such as that of municipal managers and chief executive officers. An adverse opinion is issued when the auditor determines that the financial statements are materially misstated and essentially that the information contained in them is materially incorrect, unreliable, and inaccurate in relation to the task of assessing the financial position and results of operations. A disclaimer, on the other hand, is issued when the limitation on scope is imposed by the municipality as a result of the auditor being unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support key information in the financial statements. This renders the auditor unable to express any opinions. Disclaimers and adverse audit opinions, therefore, cannot be directly linked or ascribed to corruption and maladministration. In the event that the Auditor General identifies cases of potential corruption and maladministration, these are brought to the attention of management for investigation as they constitute criminal activity. However, the absence of information resulting from the lack of proper record keeping in the case of disclaimers presents a risk of corruption because the environment becomes conducive to corruption and maladministration that can occur and remain undetected. The Minister is not considering instituting lifestyle audits in municipalities as a measure to fight corruption. Whether the Minister has the power to do that is debatable. Instead, the Minister is looking to finalize regulations which are now before Parliament and which will require senior managers in municipalities to disclose their financial interests annually within 30 days of the commencement of the new financial year of a municipality. or their date of appointment, and when they enter into an employment contract with a municipality. The other measure that is in place to prevent, or proposed, is to prevent corruption relates to the application of Section 57A3 of the Systems Act, which provides that any member of staff found to have been dismissed for financial misconduct relating to corruption and fraud will not be re-employed in any municipality for a period of 10 years. I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Honorable Mosman.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Minister, what correction measures did the Minister put in place to deal with this corruption in municipalities? And secondly, why must we wait for 20 years to implement lifestyle audits? What is it the present status, and can the Minister inform us if there is a willingness to keep councils and their councillors respectively accountable for their action? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Deputy Minister.
No, Deputy Speaker, I mean, with due respect, I don't think that's a follow-up question. It's just a restatement of the original question, which I believe I've answered at quite some length. We've already, the Honourable Member's follow-up question is premised on the existence of corruption. We've explained what the process of an audit is. We've explained that a disclaimer and a qualification does not necessarily equate to corruption. However, we do take those matters very seriously, because those things, those systemic problems and failures which result in disclaimers, do provide an environment that is conducive for corrupt activity and other criminal activity to take place. And therefore, it's necessary to support municipalities, to improve, to strengthen their financial systems. It's why we're taking the question of audits so seriously. The question of lifestyle audits, I explained in my initial answer that I don't think the Minister has the power to institute such things. However, the Department has put in place a range of other measures, including those regulations that are currently before Parliament, that require senior managers to disclose their interests on an annual basis, that also make provision for those who are found to be guilty of fraud and corruption to be banned from being employed in municipalities for a period of 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable Steenhuisen.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, we've heard a bit of obfuscation today about lifestyle audits. Let's look at what the Ministry has done. The Ministry 2 years ago set up this wonderful beast, which the Minister came to Parliament and told us was going to fight corruption, called the Anti-Corruption Inspectorate. And it was going to go out into municipalities around the country and root out these corrupt officials and prosecute them. Well, 2 years later, we have nothing but an organisation that has sat on its hands while municipalities are being pillaged by municipal councillors and officials. And I want to say to you, if you wanted a game show host, you were on a game show today, you're being sent home for that original answer you gave, because it's the wrong answer. There is a causal link between poor audit outcomes and corruption and maladministration in municipalities. If you can stand in Parliament today and deny that, then this country is in a lot more trouble than I originally thought. So I want to know, what are you going to do now with this anti-corruption inspectorate? Seeing it's done nothing concrete for the last 2 years.
Thank you, Honourable
What are you going to do about it?
Your time is up. Honourable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, maybe just a contribution of free advice to the Honourable Steenhuisen. One of the basic skills in advocacy is sometimes to understate one's case. Sometimes it takes one a whole lot further. The Honourable Steenhuisen states his case in very wide and I think ultimately quite empty terms. Yes, we understand that poor financial systems create an environment that is conducive to corruption. That is a very, very different thing to saying that there's a causal link in the sense that every time there's a qualification or a disclaimer that equates to corruption or some form of criminal activity. That, in fact, is a very, very dangerous way to put the question, because it's a fundamental misstatement of what auditing is all about. Why is it dangerous? It's dangerous because, on the one hand, a municipality can have an unqualified audit, and yet there can be the most terrible corruption and criminal activity going on. It's exactly because an audit is not meant, unless it's a forensic audit, is not meant to find criminal activity. So if you say that because this audit is unqualified, we can relax, that's a very, very dangerous thing. Conversely, there could be a whole host of reasons why a municipality or any other institution gets a qualification or a disclaimer. It might have nothing to do with criminal activity. And then to cast aspersions on officials who might be honest and well-meaning, but simply don't have the capacity, don't have the resources to do their work, I think does a grave disservice to a very, very serious issue. The question of the anti-corruption inspectorate, I think we've addressed that matter in another question. We've explained that in terms of the Constitution and the law, that unit cannot have investigating powers in the way that the police does. For that reason, the department has engaged with the Hawks, with the SIU, and has entered into agreements with those institutions in terms of which this anti-corruption body will cooperate with that. I can provide the honourable member with a more detailed response at a later stage as to the successes achieved by that. Yeah.
Honourable Ferguson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, your department definitely has a constitutional obligation to improve service delivery to citizens, to introduce different measures to arrest the corruption in municipalities. And given the damning fines by the AG, about 2/3 of all municipalities in the country, how does your department intend to monitor and implement the recommendations by the AG? And will you, having said that as a minister you don't have the power to do lifestyle audits, but are you prepared to call on SARS to do those lifestyle audits? Thank you.
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Chairperson, as I've explained, the Auditor General's findings have been acted upon immediately. We were present when the Auditor General announced the current audit findings. We tabled the Auditor General's report in the very, very first MINMEC meeting that took place after they were tabled. The COGTA nationally, together with all of the MECs, held very, very extensive discussions on how we were going to take forward those recommendations. By the time that the following MINMEC meeting took place 6 weeks ago, the MECs of local government in most of the provinces had either convened meetings of all of the municipalities to address this issue with them. In a number of those municipalities, action has already been taken against municipal managers who've presided over consistent disclaimers. I think a number of them have been dismissed. So action is being taken. In addition to that, COGTA, working together with National Treasury, have put in place a number of programs to support municipalities, to improve their capacity, to work towards unqualified audit. So it is something that we are that we take extremely seriously and that we are working together with our provincial counterparts to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, sorry, no, I think on the question of lifestyle audits, I think it's quite well known that SARS is already embarking on that process. I don't think there's a necessity for an additional call. I think they're doing quite well at the moment.
Thank you. Honourable Machoba.
and Yabulela Somlom, Segala Somlom. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister, for your response. But can you share with the House what program does the department have to assist those municipalities which are getting disclaimers and adverse, since it is clear that the program is around the lack of capacity?
Honorable Deputy Minister.
No, Chairperson, as I indicated, the department does already have a program called Operation Clean Audit. We have reported to the Portfolio Committee on the progress with that program. We've also shared with the Portfolio Committee what the challenges have been with the implementation of that program. In addition to Operation Clean Audit, as I said, we are working very, very closely with National Treasury and with the MECs in the different provinces to support municipalities, be that through the secondment of teams of experts to assist those municipalities, to engage in training and capacity building. We've also facilitated municipalities to enter into partnerships with the private sector to assist them in this regard. So there are a whole number of steps that are being taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Question number 328 has been asked by Honorable Ramodibe to the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disability. Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the planning for Program 4 to implement 15 performance indicators was over-ambitious. Hence, in the 2013-2014, this was corrected, and the annual performance plan used a SMART principle to ensure that we have indicators that were measurable and that we were going to implement. The main cost drivers for the expenditure would include the National Disability Machinery consultative meetings, which comprise mostly disabled people's organizations, national, provincial, and local government departments. They also include reporting on international obligations, also educational and awareness programs, particularly during the Disability Month and on International Day for Persons with Disabilities, the provincial road shows where we have meetings with the provincial executive councils of various provinces to highlight the concerns and gaps in terms of implementing policy and the rights of persons with disabilities. But also we have traveled all over the country visiting universities and high education institutions, FETs, where we have deliberated and ensured that students or learners with disabilities are accommodated. Also, we have spent in implementing these projects and activities that assisted us to look at reasonable accommodation for disabled persons, but also to do surveys in the workplace to look at the concerns of persons with disabilities who are in employment, but also the gaps in policy. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I'm told that Honorable Kekana is going to ask supplementary question on behalf of Honorable Ramodibe. Honorable Kekana.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Minister, the consultation that took place for people with disability, nationally and in provinces, and those that included civil organs for people with disability, are we at this stage to say what was the outcome of those consultations? Reasonable conditions for people with disability, were they created so that these people can participate? And lastly, with your good project for rural women and in agriculture, are these rural agricultural self-employment projects that have involved Japanese companies that are supplying irrigation schemes? Are those good projects for self-employment and sustainability? Are they involving people with disability? I hope you're not excluding them there. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Kekana. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. These consultations, most of them were to assist the department to develop policies and programs. Firstly, Honorable Kekana asked about the reasonable conditions for people to participate. Well, as members know, most of our people with disabilities need personal assistance. Some of them need sign language interpreters. Some of them would need accessible accommodation. All this had to be taken into consideration in terms of venues, in terms of accommodation, but also ensuring that we engage people who will be able to interpret for deaf people. But also, Honorable Member, that has budgetary implications as well, because if someone is on the wheelchair, needs someone to accompany them to the meeting, we have to take that into consideration. In terms of the outcomes of these consultations, I think the most important to benefit people with disabilities would be the National Disability Rights Policy that is under discussion right now. Also, we have worked very closely with the Department of Public Service and Administration to develop the reasonable accommodation policy for civil servants, and that is almost at its final stages, and we believe it will benefit people with disabilities because it will ensure that in their workplaces they have the instruments that they require, but also they have accommodation and access. We have also been working with the Department of Social Development through these consultations and the disability sector, where we've been able to develop the Universal Access to Early Childhood Development Program of Action that is being implemented now in 2013.
Honorable Minister, I'm sure you'll complete your time is up. You'll complete in other questions.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Lamula.
House Chair. Minister, thanks for the answer. You said that it was over-ambitious of your department to set up 15 targets and then only meeting 5. Was it over-ambitious of your department to spend 85% of the budget, yet only reaching 5 targets? Though it was planned for. And can the Minister explain to us how these missed targets will impact on this financial year's targets? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. These targets have been accommodated, and I think there was a problem with the drafting of the targets, which ended up being 15. But as I said, we have a tiny budget in this department in ensuring that we reach out as we are at the stage of developing policy in the department. We have to consult extensively. As we all know, people with disabilities have a slogan, "Nothing about us without us." And it is mostly through these consultations that a lot of the budget was spent, but I am happy that the outcome, particularly the policy that is being developed, not only through my department, but other departments as well, will ensure that the rights of persons with disabilities in our country are realized. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, with regards to your international obligations, which you've just mentioned, I actually wanted to check how many of the articles that form part of the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, which we are signatories to, are we actually fully complying with? Because a brief look at, for example, Article 9 states that the state shall take appropriate measures, for example, to provide in buildings open to the public signage in Braille. We certainly don't fully comply with that everywhere, and to provide forms of assistance, guides, and sign language interpreters at state facilities. We certainly don't comply with that. Many deaf people can't access government services. This then raises the question, Honourable Minister, are taxpayers getting value for their 9.9 million, which is spent on travel to, for example, report on developments for disabled communities? And by when do you think we will be able to fully comply with all the charters in this UN convention? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I want to emphasize, Deputy Speaker, that very little of this budget was spent on international travel. Most of this budget was spent here in South Africa. Secondly, a lot has been done by the ANC government to ensure that we train sign language interpreters, that we have braille material, that our buildings are accessible. The Minister of Public Works has a special budget that ensures that we implement the UN Convention and comply with accessibility in government buildings. Also, our municipalities have started. We know that the municipal buses and buildings in eThekwini, for instance, are accessible. Rea Vaya in Johannesburg is accessible. Also, the Gautrain in Gauteng is accessible. I'm not saying we have done everything. We have started, yes, but a lot more needs to be done. We also commend the Minister of Basic Education, who has published the sign language curriculum now in 2013 that will be introduced in our schools next year, which means we will have more sign language interpreters that can go to our courts, to our clinics, to our hospitals, to ensure that deaf people have access to government services. Braille production of learning materials has also been accomplished in 2013. We also have the universal access to early childhood development through social development that I have referred to. And the Minister of Higher Education is also ensuring that students with disabilities have access to FETs and higher learning. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Question number 299 has been asked by Honourable Steenhuisen to the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Honourable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. And just for the benefit of the Honourable Steenhuisen, the Minister is in fact out of the country and requested to do so by the President. The Minister views non-compliance with legislation as in a serious light. It hampers the professionalisation of local government administration, and it has a direct impact on the quality of service delivery by municipalities. The implementation of the Municipal Systems Act regulations expected in November of 2013 will be a positive step to ensure compliance with the legislation. The Minister is working closely with the MECs responsible for local government in the provinces to ensure that municipal managers and managers directly accountable to them comply with minimum competency levels as prescribed before they are appointed, and also to monitor that financial managers comply as provided for in the Municipal Finance Management Act regulations. Failure to comply may result in the MEC or the Minister approaching the courts for a declaratory order as provided for in the Municipal Systems Act. The implementation of the minimum competency levels for municipal managers and senior managers is the responsibility of municipalities, and mayors are responsible for monitoring that there is comprehensive compliance before any appointment is made. The Minister has requested MECs responsible for local government in the provinces and mayors to monitor compliance with the minimum competency levels and to make appropriate interventions. SALGA is also closely involved. The Minister notes with concern that the majority of municipal managers and managers accountable to them did not satisfy the requirement to set out in the minimum competency levels contained in the MA regulations by the 1st of January 2013. Most municipalities made an application to National Treasury formally seeking permission to delay the enforcement of the minimum competency regulations, to allow officials to finalize their training beyond the 1st of January 2013 deadline. This process is termed the consideration of the special merit cases. Successful municipalities will be granted an additional 18 months to finalize training by the 1st of July 2014. MECs of Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Northern Cape and Northwest provinces have been requested by the Minister to follow up with respect to the 11 municipalities that have to date failed to submit the required special merit case application. The list of applications received for the special merit cases reveals that most municipal managers and senior managers have applied for, and most have complied with, 3 out of the 4 prescribed requirements. The 4th requirement relating to financial management and supply chain management competencies is still to be complied with. Most municipalities made applications in line with this 4th requirement for more comprehensive compliance under the prescribed regulations. The Ministers for Cooperative Governance and Finance are responsible for the MFMA regulations. The 2 departments are in discussion to have one composite set of regulations on minimum competency levels for municipal managers and managers directly accountable to them. The 2 ministers are working closely to monitor compliance with the minimum competency levels by municipalities. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Is there a supplementary question, Honourable Steenhuisen?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the Deputy Minister's previous lecture on delivery and the continuous drone attacks he subjects us to in the House, I'll take it from whence it comes. Allow me to say that I thank you for the answer, but I'm sure that the Deputy Minister will agree with me that it's very concerning that the modules outstanding are probably the modules that have the greatest impact on the problems that we're experiencing at a local government level, namely financial management and supply chain management. Both key areas identified by the Auditor General in his numerous reports. Now, one of the other aspects that the Auditor General has spoken about at length is the lack of consequences. And frankly, you haven't answered my question in the House today, and that is, what steps do you intend to take against those managers who do not meet those requirements by July 14? Are you going to fire them? Are they going to be given a warning? What is the department going to do? Or is this just going to be another set of regulations that the department puts out that nobody complies with and everybody forgets about 3 years later?
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, seeing that the Honourable Steenhuisen and I have locked into the trading of barbs, may I take him up on his game show remark earlier and ask him whether he's wanting to turn this House into DA idols. So, no, Honourable Steenhuisen, as we indicated in the reply, these provisions were set out. We've reached a stage where, as I indicated, in the vast majority of cases, managers, municipal managers and other managers, senior managers accountable to them, have complied with 3 out of the 4 requirements. That is progress. Many of these municipalities have come back, they've indicated that there are constraints. This is not a matter that deserves trivialization. Many of those municipalities have made out solid cases. They've made out cases of lack of constraints that they've experienced. They've also indicated in certain cases that there are municipal managers and senior managers who in other respects are absolutely eminently suitable and who are in fact doing brilliant work, but who technically are not in compliance with this. We have made it very clear we don't condone that non-compliance, but they've gone through a process of requesting an extension. I would say let us wait for that period to run its course. We are monitoring it carefully. We are supporting those municipalities. Let us not preempt the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Sekgale Diswa.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Deputy Minister, for your reply. Can Deputy Minister share some information on those municipalities which have complied with the provision of Treasury Circulation number 60 on minimum competency and regulation? And what are the success in capacity building initiatives aimed at enhancing sector-specific competency for the newly appointed officials? Thank you.
Deputy Minister. Honourable.
No, Chairperson, I think as I indicated in the main reply, these regulations, these measures represent a step forward in enhancing, promoting the professionalization of the public service at local government level. Those measures were put in place, steps were taken, municipal managers and senior managers have qualified, have complied with, in the vast majority of cases, with 3 out of the 4 of those requirements. In addition to that, we've put in place, or we are putting in place, regulations that are currently before Parliament that will set standards for the employment of municipal managers and senior managers. It will set out very, very definite processes for how that employment should take place. So I think the whole question of the professionalization of the public service at local government is receiving a lot of attention. I think that should also be seen in the context of the steps that are also being taken by the Minister for Public Service and Administration with respect to national and provincial government. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Killian.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Deputy Minister, the problem that we face in local government is that the functionality and service delivery that we expect from that sphere of government is critical for a peaceful South Africa and its future. And I think we all agree that that is the case, and we therefore commend you for steps taken to improve the professionality. I just want to need clarity in respect of when is the department approached for a sort of a request to extend the period of compliance? Is it before or after such a decision was taken by a council? Because for councils to comply with everything, with Treasury regulations and with ministers' regulations, local government, cooperative governance, it is important for them to understand that they should first get permission before they take unlawful decisions. Would you support a suggestion that councillors who pass unlawful decisions should be held personally liable for such decisions, if it is absolutely flying in the face of all measures that you institute to ensure
Honourable.
accountable government?
Your time is
Thank you.
up now. Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, I think first of all to agree wholeheartedly with the Honourable Killian's point of departure. I think that is a shared approach, it's a shared concern, it's something that we all recognise, it's something that features very, very prominently in our National Development Plan. The importance of local government to every other aspect of our success as a nation. And for that to happen, we do need a professional, well-functioning civil service at the level of local government, and that is why we've taken a lot of these measures. With respect to with respect to these measures, as I indicated, there was a application in terms of which that deadline has been extended to July of 2014. I think related but distinct from that is the request that municipalities make for deviations. Those are requests that are sent on a case-by-case basis to either the Minister of Cogta or to the Minister of Finance, depending on which employees are being appointed. And I mean, obviously, those requests need to be made before employment is finalized, and non-compliance obviously would be a serious matter. The question of holding individual councillors liable for decisions that they take, I think Honourable Killian, is something that we can engage on further, but I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of quite a number of challenges to adopting such a position. I think honourable members of Parliament can ask themselves whether they would want to be held individually liable for the decisions of the collectives to which they belong and they've been elected to. I don't know. Does one hold everyone in council liable, or only those who voted one way or another? I mean, I think the difficulties and the complications are obvious, but we can engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Smith.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The Deputy Minister gave the impression in his reply to the question in the beginning that there was in fact a very high level of compliance with the requirement, and it was perhaps satisfactory. But it would be useful to back it up with some numbers. I mean, for example, I would like to know how many people in total were required to comply with the requirements in the first instance, how many of them did satisfy the deadline, how many of them have done 3/4 of the thing, how many have applied for extensions, and so on. Some sort of statistical basis for your seeming confidence in what the process so far.
No, Honourable Smith, thank you very much. I think that is something that we will undertake to obtain and to provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Question number 327 has been asked by Honourable Maduleke to the Minister in the Presidency, Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, as well as Administration in the Presidency. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In response to this question, a new reservoir of 2.5 megalitres is substantially complete, with the contractor on site currently undertaking pressure and water seal tests. which are scheduled to be completed by the end of November 2013. When the reservoir is completed, water storage capacity will be increased in the area from 0.35 megaliters to 2.5 megaliters. The old reservoir will be discontinued. At the time when the President visited the site, only the earthworks for the reservoir had been started. Now a completed structure is in place. Following the presidential monitoring visit to the area, 10 new boreholes and their associated pump stations construction is complete, and all equipment has been installed. The process of completing the interconnecting pipeline between the new reservoir and the existing main bulk line to improve security of reticulation supply is underway. Construction of approximately 10 kilometers of pipeline is 95% complete, and the reservoir is 98% complete, and is also in the commissioning phase. ESCOM completed its power supply to the scheme on schedule, ensuring that there is no delay to the completion of the work of the contractor, and all the pump stations are now connected to the electricity. The Ngobi residents have access to water, and the security of water supply will be enhanced once the new reservoir is commissioned. On the rehabilitation of roads in and around Mretele, the Department of Roads and Public Works in the Northwest initiated projects that include the rehabilitation of the R101 and the Makapanstad and Swardam Road, the rehabilitation of D614, D634, D632. The rehabilitation of R101 is in progress, and the other district roads are budgeted for implementation in 2015-2016 financial year. The Makapanstad to Swardam Road has been completed. There was no commitment made on rail in this area. The commitments have been monitored on an average every quarter since the presidential visit, and wherever urgent issues have arisen. The pump stations, the reservoir, the pipeline construction sites were last visited by our department, including engineers, on the 1st of October 2013, and the verification photographs has already been taken and the report has been presented in this regard. A monitoring task team has been established and is coordinated by the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency and the Office of the Premier in the Northwest, and includes the Mretele municipality. Other key stakeholders, such as the Department of Water Affairs, as well as ESCOM, have attended meetings and reported on progress made. The provincial government of the Northwest and the Mretele municipality are also engaged within the PICC SIP4 process, which is headed by the Minister of Transport, coordinated by Sandra, and monitored by the PICC Secretariat team within the Department of Economic Development.
Thank you, Minister. You'll respond again that your time is up, really. Is there a supplementary question, Honorable Maluleke? The level of noise on this site is rather high. Deputy Minister, can you do your lecture order? Deputy Minister, can you do your lecture more quietly? Honorable Maluleke, any supplementary question?
Thank you, Minister, for the reply. Minister, what are the involvement of the community structures in Ngobi presidential commitment? And how will intervention empower and create jobs opportunities for the community? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maluleke. Honorable Minister.
With regard to projects of this nature, where it's as a result of the Siashola program of the President. The normal operational principles apply, because what we do in general is to ensure that once a visit has been undertaken and commitments have been made, we mobilize the relevant stakeholders, particularly provincial and national departments and municipalities, to intervene in those areas. Obviously, we expect that what committees in those areas themselves would be involved, and if there are steering committees which are in charge of some project, themselves will be involved, but those issues are dealt with by the relevant departments which are executing those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Maklua.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Listening to the question, I see that the election campaign of the Minister has started. Minister, we believe that monitoring and oversight in the presidency is not just having walkabouts with government officials. And if we, Minister, are serious about oversight, I think it's about time for this Parliament to empower members of Parliament to keep those who are working with these processes accountable. And it's about time for us that we must establish a portfolio committee to have oversight over the presidency. The President actually took a very big delegation there. Minister Etna Molewa was part of the delegation. And that specific day, she promised an additional 14 boreholes. Can the Minister also inform us on the additional boreholes that is being promised, and also what the status of this additional boreholes is that has been promised by Minister Molewa, and how far is that construction? And we also say that we expect a response here today that the project should have been completed since 2012. I thank you.
Honorable Minister.
The honorable member, I think, is the one who is engaged in electioneering. But nevertheless, in response to the question which has been asked, the question related to Nkobi, we do indicate that once the pipeline has been connected, the main pipeline has been connected to the reservoir, and the additional boreholes which have been put in place for now, we think it will have sufficient capacity to supply water to the area without additional boreholes which need to be put in place. And as we said, that by the end of November, we expect that that process should be completed and people should be having sufficient water to be able to deal with that. If there's any shortage, in any case, that will be part of the normal operational purposes, operational undertakings by the municipality and the provincial government to ensure that there is supply of water and services in that area. But with regard to, as a result of the visit of the President, all that has been undertaken has been implemented and will be completed on schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Ramatlakane.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Following your reply, as a person responsible to monitoring and evaluation, I take that the report is very good that you have just given, and having read your latest monitoring and evaluation of the department, I did say that sometimes maybe you will need a bullet-proof vest for the frankness. But following this issue, what I want to ask you that you did not mention is when the President and the ministers visited the area, it was reported that, of course, the tap was open and water came out. But a few days after the President's visit, the tap ran dry. There was no further water coming out of the tap. Now, I just want to understand from you, in the work of you did maybe to go and re-evaluate what has actually happened. What was the finding that after the President's visit, the tap ran dry, there was no more water coming out of the tap?
Thank you,
when
Honorable
the President was there,
Ramatlakane.
the water was coming.
Honorable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Member. You would note that there were reports, as you said in the press, that when the President left, the water stopped coming out. The President didn't bring the water there. Unfortunately, I was with him, so he didn't bring any water to that area. But water was available on that day. The reports that when we left, after some days, water has not been there. What I can confirm is that area has got very serious challenges with regard to water. It's a very flat area. It's dependent mainly on boreholes, and from time to time, the boreholes themselves get out of order. But secondly, as I indicated in my response, that the current capacity of the reservoir is 0.35 megaliters, and it's only now that we're putting a bigger one. So therefore, from time to time, the community there would face challenges of water, whether the President was there or not. But now we're confident that it will be improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question number 306 was asked by Honorable Lamula to the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The Council, in partnership with the Department, has identified hotspots. However, because of the increasing scourge of gender-based violence in the country, this is a work in progress. The Department and the Council, however, have responded to incidents of violence against women and children, including the elderly and lesbian women. The Department and the Council have engaged communities in awareness raising and finding solutions as a collective to the scourge of violence against women and children. The most vulnerable targets have also been identified, and these include elderly women who have been killed, raped and killed, some alleged to be witches, but also children and lesbian women. The areas identified are the Eastern Cape, the Pondoland area is one of them. Here in the Western Cape, Khayelitsha in particular, and some campaigns have been organized there in partnership with the SAPS and other departments, but also Gauteng in the East Rand. And in the last month or so, we have also focused in the Johannesburg area, Limpopo and the Free State are just a few of the areas that we have focused on and that have been identified as hotspots. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Is there a supplementary question, Honorable Lamula?
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Minister, you know and I know that funding is a huge problem for this council, and they cannot do what they ought to do. The people of this country, Minister, who suffer most because of gender-based violence, do not need another set of highly paid civil servants. They need action. Besides this department, and this is Women, Children and People with Disabilities, with its mandate to monitor and coordinate, we have the Commission of Gender Equality, we have the Human Rights Commission, we have the Interministerial Committee tasked with developing a strategy to deal with violence against women and children, and a gender and sexual orientation-based violence task team for hate crimes. How does the minister then justify spending millions on establishing another council, especially with a shortage of funding, for which funds are already not, for which funds aren't readily available? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I would have thought that the Honorable Member would say at least the scourge of violence against women and children deserves to be prioritized. Innocent women, children, and elderly women are dying every day in our country. This department does not have the capacity to be everywhere in the country to monitor this violence, and the honorable member knows that very well. Ingxaki ke ka DA intuba abakhathali ngumama. Ingxaki ka DA intuba abakhathali ngabantu abakhubazekileyo nabantwana. Ingxaki ka DA bayabuza abantu abakhubazekileyo uba babethe abafuna uthethelelwa nini. Nina as members of parliament eni ngena ngxaki. Baphi abantu abakhubazekileyo kula maqela aphikisayo. Baphi abantu abakhubazekileyo basukume bona ngokwabo bazithethele. Nime apha ngezisu ezikhulu nibahle nityebile nibashiye mva nibavalele ezikoneni abakwazi ukuza apha bazozilwela ngamalungelo abo. Ngoko ke masiyeke i-double standard singu-DA. Amakhosikazi apha kule cabinet yase-Western Cape akukho nenye inkosikazi enowuma ilwele amalungelo amakhosikazi nabantwana. Inye cha inkosikazi ekhoyo apha ngu-Iron Lady. Sisebenzile ke thina. We were part of the Men's March ne council on the 24th of August this year. Sisebenza no tata who are saying enough is enough, not in our name. Sidibene thina nesafa kuba sithe enye ye targets is youth, because it is the youth that are abused. It is the youth that are victims of satanism, of rape, of drugs. Sidibene kwisafa, saya kwi-FIFA game yebafana bafana against Botswana. Apho salontsha khona ivimbela Mzansi campaign. Apho sathetha ngeviolence ne-abuse yamakhosikazi eKings Park eThekwini estadium kugcwele ngabantu abatsha. Apho ukhune wathetha khona nabantu abatsha.
Enkosi Minister. Honorable Nxumalo.
Ngiyabonga Sekela Somlomo. Umbuzo wami wokulandelela follow up ku minister kuNgqongqoshe. Ngqongqoshe ngicela ukubuza nje ukuthi nahlangana namakhosi ukuxoxa le daba olukhulu kangaka lokuhlukumezeka kwabantu besifazane nabantwana. Kunokuhlukumezeka kwabantu ababizwa ama-gay nama-lesbian. So uhlangene nabo nani department le yakho. Kuze mhlambe kubonakala ukuthi kuncishiswa konke lokhu kuze uhlangane nabo uxoxisane ubuzwe ukuthi yini into engabanceda na. Ndabeze nkolo ukuthi bancedisane nathi ukulwa nalolu dlame olungaka oluhlasela abantu besifazane nabantwana. So uhlangane nabo na. Ngiyabonga Ngqongqoshe.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
Ngiyabonga Somlomo. Yebo empeleni sihlangene namakhosi, sihlangane nawo ngomhla ka-11 kuJune i-leadership National Traditional House of Traditional Leaders National bekhona nabase Free State, KwaZulu Natal, Limpopo, Northwest, Eastern Cape, bonke bezokulwa nathi ngalolu daba. Ekhona no Contralesa, uSecretary General wabo, athi amakhosi nawo aphathake kabi ahlukumezekile into eyenzekayo ezindaweni zabo, kakhulukazi ukuhlukunyezwa kwabantwana nogogo. Athi amakhosi azobambisana nathi ane campaign yawo ayibiza Ondaba Ezitha. Leyo campaign kuyiyona abafuna ukuthi ithathe lo mkhankaso wokulwa nokuhlukunyezwa nokubulawa kwabantwana namakhosikazi. Bathi futhi sibambisane neombutho wondlunkulu ekuwona emakhosini ogqugquzela ukushaywa nokuhlukunyezwa kwabomama nezingane. Basho bethi ke bayafuna ukuthi sibambisane ne gender committee yabo ekhona la eParliament ebese sisebenza nayo ke ukuya phambili ukuimplementa i365 days for no violence against women and children. Siphinde futhi sahlangana ne-National Religious Council equka ama-Muslim, ama-Hindu, ama-Krestu, nabenkolo zesintu kunye no-SACC. Lapho sihlangane khona nabo ngomhla ka-11 kuJune salontsha i-campaign, sipartnerishe futhi no Department of Basic Education. Bathi ke bona abefundisi bafuna ukusebenza nezingane, bafuna ukushumayela i-bill of responsibilities because bafuna ukuthi abantwana bazi ukuthi if you have a right to education, you also have a right, a responsibility to go to school. You have a responsibility to learn and study and pass at the end of the day.
English Minister. No, you Honorable Van der Merwe, you're the last one on this question.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, as you know, it would have been Anine Boyson's 18th birthday today. And while the rape of Anine Boyson and the Diepsloot toddlers, the rape and murder of these toddlers made headlines, they were not isolated incidents. Honourable Minister, the alarming increase in child homicides in South Africa must be declared a national crisis. Would you consider, therefore, Minister, to lobby your colleagues, especially those in the peace and security cluster, to treat this scourge as a national crisis and to demonstrate leadership and to table a new clear plan of action to fight crime against women, children and especially the elderly? Because without a national plan of action, we are ill-equipped to stop this evil. I know that you will tell me that the National Council Against Gender-Based Violence has been established for this role, but the fact of the matter is it not a futile exercise to continuously pin our hopes on a national council that has no funding to do its job? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, ndicinga uba lo msebenzi sele usenziwa zii-departments. Sidibene kwi-National Council nazo zonke ezi departments. Siyawenza lo msebenzi noba asinamali, sisebenzisa ezi resources sinazo. Saye sisebenza nezi community organizations sendizibalule, abefundisi, the men's sector, amakhosi, the LGBTI community, nabo esesibambe icampaign nabo apha ekhaya elitsha naseThokoza. Esivuya kakhulu namhlanje xa isigebengwa esa rape sabulala uDudu Zozo singapha kwezitshixo, sithemba into yoba sizawunikwa udilika jele. Sivuya kakhulu kwakhona naxa lo wayibulele uAnine Boyson efunyenwe enetyala lodlwengula nelokubulala, sithi naye makadilikelwe ngumgodi, makadilikelwe lijele. Sithi ke thina into esijongileyo kukubona amaqela la aphikisayo ekhokhela, because this is not about an election campaign. Ndikhe ndabona oArhang benxibe i-t-shirt zika Annelisa noZandile Mali, ndazibuza uba kanti inhlungu yokufelwa ngabantwana into yokukhankasela ivoti na. I think this is a very serious matter and tragedy that is facing our country. Uba singabe sidlala cheap political games ngokufa kwabantwana, ndicinga ba sonke silapha, noba ngu IFP, noba ngu DA, noba ngu COPE, masisukumeni and save our children. Ngoko ke ayingo mthwalo kaRhulumente yedwa, ngumthwalo nomsebenzi wethu sonke, singamaKrestu, singamaMuslim, singabantu base South Africa, singamalungu eParliamente nenkokheli zawo wonke lamaqela basidibane silwe esisiyeleku sihlele abantwana nabantu abangomama eSouth Africa. Ndiyabulela Somlomo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The time allocated for questions has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. We now come to notices of motion. Does any member wish to give notice of a motion?
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the transformation of the ICT sector and in order to ensure that all our people participate in the sector. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there other?
Sorry, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker. I thought there were no motions today except the one moved by the Chief Whip.
Well, I wasn't told that. There's that in front of me. Unless you're saying there are no motions. Okay. You mustn't put them on the order paper if they are not going to be read. The last item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I move that the House suspends Rule 253, subsection 1, which provides inter alia that the debate on the second reading of the bill may not commence before at least 3 working days have elapsed since the committee's report was tabled, for the purposes of conducting a second reading debate on Thursday, 31st of October 2013, on the following bills. A, Employment Tax Incentive Bill. 2B, Taxation Laws Amendment Bill. C, Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. That concludes the business for the day. The House is adjourned.